let's start with you, Representative Mike Caruso. I wanted to ask you, just generally speaking, um, what are you most proud of that you've accomplished in the Florida House, and what do you want to do in your next term?
Oh, that's a great question. I'd say most proud of is, the legislation I passed and the appropriations I brought back, nearly $150 million in appropriations for mostly Palm Beach County, different organizations, municipalities, and the state schools, and the legislation surrounding sober homes, and that arena, and the Jewish community. I've passed bills on anti-Semitism, Holocaust education, a memorial, made it so that Hatzalah nonprofit ambulance service can operate in the state of Florida and be sensitive to the special needs of the Jewish community, and that's what I've done. What I want to do is, I serve as vice chair of the publics of pandemics and public emergencies, and I'd like to. I think we need to readdress the recertification bill that we passed on condominiums 3 stories or more, and we need to look to lengthen the time, and come up with standards for engineers to follow. There's a lot of inconsistency out there, and we may need to lengthen the time also on reserves that we made mandatory. That's one thing. Another one, I want to keep working on septic to sewer. Clean water is so important in our state, and as I say, Florida's not Florida without clean water. And right now, my district, District 89, it has 14 cities that in north to south, starting in Boca and ending in Singer Island, and those there's a lot of septic tanks, and we know that 80% of the 2 million septic tanks in the state of Florida don't work properly. They have some deficiency. Most of them can be resolved with minimum maintenance, under $200 of maintenance, and can be put back. But I'd like to see a transition from septic to sewer, especially in our coastal communities, to clean up our intercoastal and prevent blue-green algae and red tide from reoccurring.
Okay. All right.
I'd like to delve into the guardianship laws. Guardianship laws right now, there's the way they're set up. The guardians can prohibit family members from even visiting their loved ones. That's wrong. The way that the judges select guardians should be at a random process, not a special select process where they choose ones that they seem to always work with, usually the bigger companies. I just don't like that process. Another area, I'd like to continue. I passed legislation that had to do with getting rid of the sales tax on commercial leases. We reduced it to 2%. I want to reduce that down to 0. We're the only state in the country that does that. And of course, I want to keep Florida open and keep it in business and keep work with our education system. And continue to promote vocational training in our high schools, continue to promote vocational training in our colleges, etc. Because when we have a trained workforce, the businesses will come and they'll bring jobs.
Very good. Okay, thanks, Mike. Couple of quick follow-ups. This septic to sewer initiative in coastal communities, is this going to be paid for by the state, by the locals, a combination? What is it?
Well, in Hypaluxo, the town of Hypaluxo, I got them, I believe, $400,000 to complete their septic to sewer conversion. And that money came through this year. I'll continue to push for state funding of that septic to sewer conversion. It was a matching. I think the town of Hypaluxo put up an equal amount, and I think that's a great way to encourage towns to do it.
Okay. And overall, I'm going to switch gears a bit. Give us an overall assessment. What kind of job is Ron DeSantis doing as governor?
I think the governor has expressed and demonstrated great leadership. He's led the way on keeping our state free, keeping our businesses open, keeping our economy strong. And he makes it easy to follow as a state representative. You know where he's going, and he leads the way. So I think the governor overall has done a great job.
Okay. I'm going to turn the floor over to Sienna Osta, the challenger here. Good morning. Thanks very much. You've just heard a full explanation from your opponent. Give us your assessment of Mike Caruso's record as the incumbent House member and what you would do and how you would vote differently.
Okay, yes. So good morning, everyone. I think that's a really good question. And, you know, I had decided to run for state representative of my district actually before I knew that Mr. Caruso was going to be moving to District 87. So I didn't know he was going to be my opponent at first, but I knew from the get-go that I wanted to run for office to protect women's rights and to also protect the rights of our LGBTQ community. And in this regard, as far as your question asking about his voter history, Mr. Caruso in the past has voted in favor of the 15-week abortion ban, regardless of rape, incest, or human trafficking. He also voted in favor of the Don't Say Gay bill. And so when I did my research and got wind of that, I knew that I had to continue running, and we've got to win 87.
Okay. This is your first attempt to run for public office?
It is not. This is actually my second. I first ran in 2020. You know, I'm an attorney, but I had no political aspirations or ambitions whatsoever. And then we had COVID. We had the George Floyd incident, and we had the Black Lives Matter movement. And with COVID, I went remote. And, you know, it's crazy how you have that 45-minute commute. You get rid of that 45-minute commute, and suddenly you're able to think and actually observe the world around you. And so when we had the George Floyd incident, the Black Lives Matter movement, I was very compelled. I was very inspired by that. And I don't know if you remember this, but at the time, everybody was posting a little black square on social media. And I thought, okay, I could post a little black square on Instagram like everybody else. But first of all, what good does that do? I mean, who does that really help? And secondly, how is anybody to know whether or not that's genuine? You know, maybe I'm just some girl on Instagram who wants likes or something. So I know that I'm a very good lawyer, a very good negotiator, and I wanted to figure out what could I do with this skill set that would help the most number of people. And so I looked up offices up for election, and I first saw senator, and I thought, well, Senator Sienna does sound nice, but I at least have some self-awareness. So I dialed it back and I looked at state representative. And at the time, if you recall, in 2020, based on where I live in the same place in downtown West Palm. My district, before the redistricting maps came out, I was in 88, hence the little, where is it, the little sticky note on the sign behind me. But yeah, so at that time, the incumbent was Al Jaquette, and when I first looked him up, he looked like a young Barack Obama. I thought, you know, by the looks of him, he had everything under control, and I'm not ended. So I went to bed at night, and then I woke up the next morning. I was like, you know what? Let me do some digging. So I started to dig, and I found there were a lot of problems. And I decided, you know what? I'm going to run because I can do this, and I can do it a lot better. And on my end, just, you know, the video is a little bit choppy. Oh, okay. Did I lose anyone?
Yeah, I tend to drop in and out. So.
Oh, you're still here.
Okay. Okay. Just let me know if my video or my audio cuts out and I can repeat anything. But yes, so that was the first time I ran in 2020. Now I jumped into the race at the very last minute, like June of 2020. So from June to the August primary, that was the limited time that I had to campaign. And, you know, I didn't win the primary, but I had pretty good results. And I had so many people reach out to me saying, please run again. We need people like you in office. And I still feel very compelled, you know, like a magnet, a little magnet being pulled to a very big magnet. That's how I would describe how it feels.
Let me open the questioning up to my colleagues, either Randy Schultz or Dan Sweeney.
Well, let's just talk about the district. Mike, you said District 89. You're not running in that. You're in 87. Why didn't you simply stay and run in the district where you live?
Good question, Randy. District 89 got chopped up into three pieces. I believe it's 90, 91, 87, and I think it's 90 is the Delray Boynton district. And I feel like, I'd be picking up a third of my district no matter which one I ran in. So if I ran in the Boca Highland Beach district, it goes from the Ocean to 441, or the Delray Boynton, it goes all the way from Ocean to 441, or I go to the north, I'm only maintaining a third of my district no matter which one I pick. I looked at the districts at the time. The district I live in, plus it was I believe it was a plus 14 Democrat seat. I know Joe Casello was running it, and he's a friend of mine. And I left that for him. I figured he'd be strong in a primary and would win that seat. I've worked with Joe a lot in the Florida House. We've co-sponsored bills together and co-sponsored bills together and appropriations. So then it was a question of, do I, Boca or move north? And I like the way the district was 87. 87 is a solid district. It makes up a number of the towns that I already represent. And so I decided to take on District 87. I've got a place.
Property records show that you still have your residence in Delray Beach. What will you do? What will you do if you move or if you win?
Great, Randy. I've already rented a place in West Palm Beach at One Central Plaza. I think it's 801 Olive. That lease begins on October 1st. And in the meantime, we're going to redo our residence. It's a little tired, and we're going to reconstruct it.
Okay, so you are going to establish residency in West Palm, but only temporarily?
Yeah, and no, I plan on being there after we reconstruct it. We're going to sell it, and in the meantime, over the next year, I'll be looking for a place to buy in District 87, and we'll do that after we sell the home in Delray Beach.
Okay.
We have a plan.
I want to just follow up on that very briefly. Just real quickly. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Dan. Mike, based on what you've just told us, would you agree Sienna Osta has deeper roots in this district than you do?
No, I mean, I don't know what kind of roots she has in the district, but I had sons that I had one son was a quarterback at Palm Beach Gardens High School for 3 years, starting quarterback, and in that position, I met much of the Palm Beach Gardens community. Another son that went to Jupiter Christian school up in Jupiter, and again, he was another quarterback in high school there. And, I think that was for 4 or 5 years, he went there and at Jupiter Christian. And I developed a strong relationship with the community through that school. So I've got strong ties throughout that area. I've been, it's been a favorite place of mine for a long time.
Ms. Osta, how long have you lived in District 87?
So I'm a Florida native. I guess we're one of the few dying breeds here, but I'm a Florida native, and I moved down to West Palm when I got hired by a law firm here in West Palm in 2016. So I immediately fell in love with West Palm. I took, as soon as you get off the exit, you pass the McLaren dealership. I'm a car person / gearhead. And as soon as I saw the McLarens, I was like, I'm coming back for you. I went to the interview. The interview went very well. I took a drive up Flagler because, I had prior to 2016 not been down here too often. So I took a drive up Flagler, saw the, the scenic views, and I said, I think I could see myself living here. And I moved down right away.
Okay, go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, Rep. Caruso, I just wanted to follow up on a couple of things you said in your introductory statement. First off, you mentioned getting rid of the commercial lease tax, which, you know, you pointed out that we're the only state that does that. We're also one of only 7 states that doesn't have a state income tax. So how much would the commercial lease tax, getting rid of it entirely, cost as far as general revenue?
That's a great question, Daniel. Bringing it from 6% to 2% cost us $1.5 billion. To take it down to 0 is going to cost about the same. And so, you know, that taking that into consideration, that we've got a surplus budget. We'll have one this year of $21 billion on top of the surplus budget we had last year. I think there's room to remove this tax from our tax system, and not affect our services that we're providing to the communities.
Okay, how do we make up the $1.5 billion that chopped the commercial lease tax from 6 to 2?
We just cut the tax, Daniel. We didn't we just the way our economy is so strong in Florida that our revenues are higher than we anticipated from the existing sales tax and things. And
I believe you made up for that difference through the American Rescue Plan money.
Even prior to that, we had a surplus.
Yeah, but you didn't have that much of a surplus. I think that's
$8
generally
billion.
acknowledged that was what enabled you to have such a hefty budget this year. So if that money is going to be gone.
Well, Randy,
So
what
you're going to be able. No, hang on. You're going to still be able to just dismiss $1.5 billion that easily.
Well, we're going to look to do that. Yes.
Okay. Sorry, Dan.
Yeah, and it's all right. Another subject you brought up was guardianship and denial of visitations. I get totally what you're saying, but also, if a judge has decided that a guardianship is needed and that the family should not be visiting that person, might there not be some reason for that? And what sort of guardrails do you have in those cases?
That's a great question, Daniel. The judges are not the ones deciding that the families cannot visit. It's the guardian that is deciding that the families can't visit.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to make it so that under certain limitations, obviously, that guardians have to allow minimum visitation rights of family members.
I would like to
That the
speak on
ones
that.
under guardianship can't be held hostage in isolation.
I mean, I understand there are definitely some horror stories about guardianships, particularly in Central Florida, and some cases that are ongoing right now. But might you be opening up people that are under guardianship to problems within their own families by doing something like that?
And certainly, we know how families can be, and that's why I said under certain limitations. If a guardian feels that somebody would be threatened physically or adversely from a mental perspective, in terms of harassment, taunting, whatever, or threats, then they can go to court and then a judge can decide. But just unilaterally, a guardian saying no, I don't think is right.
Okay, Sienna, you had your hand raised. What's up?
Yes, so I just wanted to speak to that briefly. I do, as an attorney, I have my practice, and then I also do a lot of pro bono work, mostly focusing on women in domestic violence situations. I have law school students that I mentor, and together we work on these pro bono cases, but I'm also a guardian ad litem. So I have some insight to the guardian ad litem program. And I would say from a guardian volunteer, I just want to make sure there's clarity there, because there's the paid for guardian attorneys and then the free/volunteer guardian attorneys. And that's my role. So as a volunteer, I'm a guardian ad litem for the children. I've had a number of children over the years, and I hear what Mr. Caruso is saying about, the visitation, and there should be, it should be more open for the children to be with their parents, but we are specifically trained and then retrained because there's more certifications over the years, but we are specifically trained to be concerned with the best interest of the child, or BIOC, B-I-O-C, the best interest of the child. And there's a number of considerations that go into effect there, but essentially we are looking at what is best for the child, not what's best for the parent. That's why the child needs a guardian. The child needs to be protected. We're not protecting the parents here, we're protecting the children. And oftentimes we're protecting the children from their parents who have issues with drugs, alcohol, violence, things like that. And so I had, parents that I would meet with who would say, I want to see my kids. And I would say, okay, well, prove to me that you are ready. How's your rehab going? How's this going? And then we would slowly, once I felt that the parent had reached a point where they were in a good healing place, if you will, a healing place in their rehab and everything, then I would slowly introduce the child back to them with, supervision. And if they continued to earn the right or the privilege to be with their child, then we would have longer visits. But unfortunately, from my experience, many of the parents just relapsed into drugs and alcohol, and the children had to stay with, grandparents or other family members. Yes.
And if I could just interject, Daniel, I agree with what Ms. Osta is saying with regards to children's guardianships, and it should be in the best interest of the child always. I was referring to elderly and adult guardianship, and which is a different story. It's where all of a sudden, your mom and dad are under guardianship, or your dad is under a guardianship, and then the guardian decides unilaterally that you can't go visit your dad anymore, and that's what part of the system I'm speaking of.
Ms. Osta, you have raised $4,000. Mr. Caruso has raised almost $200,000, and he's an incumbent. How do you win?
So it's actually more than 4,000. We have an upcoming report due. I'm checking my calendar here on 9/30. Oh, tomorrow. Actually, we have a new finance report that's due. So it's not 4,000. It's about closer to 7,000 or 8,000, which is still pretty far off from what Mr. Caruso has raised. But I really have not pushed for people to donate. It's rather, if you want to donate to this cause, then please do so. I'll probably have to increase some efforts, but financially I'm getting everything that I need. I've got my printed literature, I've got my signs, I've got my mailers. I do a lot of the work on my own. For example, I did my own website, which is therealsiennaosta.com. I had siennaosta.com, but then the Koreans hijacked it. So I had to get therealsiennaosta.com, but I designed all of that. I also do, pretty much all of the graphics. I don't pay a graphic designer. I do it all on my own, which is why I don't sleep very much. Slight learning curve with art stuff. I also have a wonderful team of volunteers, a campaign manager, actually 2 or 3 campaign consultants, a number of student interns who want to be involved, and everybody who is on my team is doing it because they want to be on the team. They want to contribute, and they're volunteering. I have said from the very beginning of my campaign, I don't want to have to pay you to be on my team. And I've also said in many of my speeches throughout this campaign process that I want to bring, we're switching screens here. Okay.
I have a lag on my end.
Okay,
Don't worry.
okay.
I hear everything.
Okay, good. So I'll keep going. But I keep saying to many people through different speeches and everything that I am committed to bringing the power back to the people, not to the corporations who have, for lack of a better phrase, their hands in deep pockets. So I like to say that this race is about the people, not about the money. This race is about bringing real change and integrity back into the system. And one of the messages I actually came up with for the campaign is, I have this happen to be here, that of justice. So justice, this is some of the merch that I have, but justice is a word that I coined to play on word 3 ways. JUSTUS. So it looks like just us, because at the end of the day, it's up to just us to fix things. It sounds like justice. Obviously, as a lawyer, I like the sound of justice. But lastly, like I said, it's an acronym that stands for just, unapologetic, shameless transparency for a better you, a better us, a better US. And very briefly, the idea behind that was growing up, my dad always said, you know, tell me who your friends are and I'll tell you who you are. And then he would usually say, pick better people. And, you know, I had no idea that this little nugget would stick in my brain from middle school to high school to now. And it grew into this concept of start picking better people, start picking better friends, start picking better partners, start picking better coworkers, and start picking better elected officials. And what do I mean by better? I mean people who are righteous and just, or just unapologetic, shameless, and transparent with who they are as a person. So I think the people in our district, but also the people throughout the state of Florida, want that kind of transparency and honesty. So that's another thing that I hope to deliver.
Mike, when you did the special session on insurance in May, the general consensus was this might have some time to work unless we got a storm this year. And we did.
We did.
So are you going, if you win, is the whoever wins, is the legislature going to have to go back in a special session before the regular session next year?
Randy, I see not only with insurance, I also see it when it comes to recertification. We've got deadlines coming up that just cannot be met. And I think we're going to have to extend the deadlines on that. But I don't think our work on insurance will ever be done. It's you know, we make adjustments and then go back, reassess, and make more adjustments. I think that's, I don't know if we'll, and you know, we've got to also work on property taxes. We are pricing people out of their homes in the state of Florida, and through insurance, property taxes, and now interest rates, and we need to. Well,
you've already got Save Your Homes for the homestead, so that's not really.
I missed that.
You've already got Save Our Homes for people who have homesteads. I don't think there's going to be any great sympathy for, you know, somebody who's got a second home.
No, not at all.
For that, so you don't really have any need to do that on property taxes, but you do have on insurance. And isn't it time for some fairly major different thinking on this issue? You all, not you, but Tallahassee has spent 20 or 30 years nibbling, and
right, you
know, you're going to have an insurance market now that's close to collapse. Do you respond to that with just more of the same?
No, I agree. You know, I completely agree. We have to come up with a better system. You know, and it's going to involve everything from the insurance companies and the lawyers, tort reform, and things like that. So we've got a lot of work to do on this.
Why don't you require any company that writes insurance in Florida to write all lines?
I agree with that. I think if you're selling car insurance, which is the very lucrative end of the insurance business in Florida, then you've got to also provide, you know, the other lines of insurance, such as, you know, homeowners.
Okay,
I agree. I was talking about that when I served in insurance and banking. If you go back to my committee meetings, I talked about that.
Is it possible? I mean, we have citizens already, and you just this last special session passed this large pool for reinsurance. Is it possible that homeowner property insurance in Florida is something that is largely unsolvable through the private market?
I don't know if it's unsolvable. I'm not ready to throw in the towel on it and just go with citizens, you know, as our only insurer.
I mean, it's drastic, I know, but
yeah, I'm not ready to throw in the towel on that at all. I don't think so. As long as there's, you know, there is a market here. Insurance company, we have to look at things as offering higher deductibles and ways to drive down the risk for insurance companies and drive down the cost for homeowners.
Should you require in any reforms from now on that savings be passed to policyholders?
Well, that's exactly what we did. Is in the last legislation with the reinsurance, we mandated that the savings be passed down dollar for dollar.
Yeah, I'm not think it was quite that explicit, but okay.
I've got a question on a different
Go
topic.
ahead, Steve.
I got a different topic for both candidates. I'm going to start with Representative Mike Caruso. Mike, if Governor Ron DeSantis is reelected in November, he has already said very clearly on multiple occasions he would sign a so-called open carry gun law, allowing the open display of firearms by people without having to get a concealed weapons license. Would you vote for that bill?
No,
Why not?
I don't, I don't like it. It sounds like chaos and mayhem.
In Tallahassee, correct me if I'm wrong, in Tallahassee, in a top-down, fairly rigidly run Florida House, leadership strongly encourages you how to vote. Am I right?
Well, that's why we have, the Republican Party has whips. The Democrat Party has whips. They strongly encourage their people how to vote. Apparently it's, it's a lot of block voting, where if there's 79 to 41, a lot of votes go down that way. I think you'll find that I'm probably the most bipartisan representative in the Florida House. If you look at, who I am, what I've done in the Florida House, I vote against, although I voted for the 15-week abortion bill, I voted against the abortion bill the year before. If you look at I co-sponsor and prime co-sponsor bills with Democrats. I endorsed a Democrat, Catherine Waldron, for the Florida House. I can't remember what district she's running in, but
86, I think.
86, that's right. And I think I'm the most bipartisan one. For me, it's always about the people, not the politics. I get in trouble for it a lot in the Florida House. As you say, they do encourage you to vote. And I always tell them, I came here, and the first words I said to Speaker Oliva and Speaker Sprouse, the first day I was in office, I had a recount, if you remember. They said, "Why are you here?" I said, "I'm here for the people, not the politics." And so when I get called back in to the office, when I voted for an amendment offered up by Representative Guillermo Smith. I got called into the speaker's office, and I was getting the beat down, and I said, I told you 3 years ago or 4 years ago, I'm here for the people, not the politics, and I'm still here that same way.
Remember what that issue was? That issue or that amendment?
It's something to do with the arts. I can't remember.
Okay. If you're so bipartisan, though, you could have voted against the Stop Woke Act that you voted for example.
You mean
House Bill 7?
The Don't Say Gay bill?
No, the Stop Woke Act, which basically I'm simplifying, tells teachers how to teach and what they can teach about the history of this country.
About CRT. Well, I just think, when it comes to education, I've had hour conversations with different constituents, sat down on their patios or their porches in Abacoa for an hour. And, we talk about CRT, we talk about gender identity, we talk about sexual preference, we talk about school safety, we talk about anti-Semitism in the schools, and we talk about we speak for an hour, and at the end of it, and I let the conversation go wherever they want to lead it. And at the end of it, I sit there, I tell them, I said, you know what we haven't spoken of? We haven't talked about how do we better teach reading, writing, and arithmetic to our students? How do we, should we test? We haven't spoken about less testing, and let's stop teaching the test, and let's get back to the basics of what school should be about. And that's where I stand. And I think, when we get back to reading, writing, and arithmetic, we'll
Is there
be
any
better off.
evidence that schools in Florida were teaching critical race theory?
I cannot hear you.
Is there any evidence that schools in Florida were teaching critical race theory?
I understood there was.
You understood how?
Well, I mean, just what I've been told. I
who?
hear it a lot at the doors. I hear it a lot at the school board meetings.
And yet, in the analysis of
whether-
that bill,
but Randy,
in the analysis
whether-
of that bill, there
Randy-
is no reference to it
Randy,
being
whether
done.
it's being taught or not taught, it should not be taught, and that's the point. So whether CRT is being taught, it's like, we shouldn't teach hate in our school. And you say, well, Mike, how do you know hate's not being taught in our school? I don't care if it's being. I mean, I do care if it's being taught, but whether it's being taught or not is not the point. We don't want hate being taught in our school, regardless of whether it is now or has been. We just don't. We're being prospective in it.
The governor, when he signed the Don't Say Gay bill, or whatever you want to call it, thanked, sort of in a general way, for ending, quote, sexualization in schools. Is there any evidence for ending, quote, as he put it, sexualization in schools? Was there any evidence that children in kindergarten through third grade were being sexualized?
I've seen books that teach gender identity and sexual preference in Palm Beach County school libraries myself. So I would say that's and I didn't have to do a lot of research in order to do that.
Excuse me though, Mike, the bill simply said you can't do it in K through 3. After that, it said it was age appropriate, which still has not been defined.
Well, what I found was I found a book. I can't remember the name. I've got it in my phone. That was in the I believe it was the first grade section of the library, and it did just that.
Damn it.
So I think that the Don't Say Gay bill didn't say that. It just said that if you and the text, the exact the statute itself. Basically, it says you can't include gender identity and sexual preference in the curriculum, the formal curriculum as established by the statutes of the state of Florida in our school curriculum. So that's what it said.
That's not really what it says. It says you can't do it in K through 3, and after that, it has to be age appropriate.
No, it says you can't do it in K through 3. Okay, you cannot include it in the formal curriculum as established by the statutes of the state of Florida. Okay, for K through 3. That's all it says. Doesn't say you can't say gay. Doesn't say you can't have discussions in gay.
I'm gonna let Dan pick this part up because
it does say that about the K through 3. You're right, but the actual wording of the bill does say after that where it's where age appropriate. For the rest of 4 through 12. So I don't understand what you're saying when you say it's only for K through 3. It says classrooms. Trying to find the exact wording of it, but
yeah, I don't want to look it up because I don't want to lose you on the screen. Okay.
Well, respectfully, Mike, Dan had
it says
right.
Classroom instruction by school personnel or third parties on sexual orientation or gender identity may not occur in
Hang on, Daniel, hang on. What are you reading exactly?
I'm reading the language of the bill, the language of the law.
So, okay.
Classroom instruction by school personnel or third parties on sexual orientation or gender identity may not occur in kindergarten through grade 3 or in a manner that is not age appropriate or developmentally appropriate for students in accordance with state standards.
Okay.
So yes, it bans from K through 3, but I think a lot of the criticism around this is on that second part of that sentence, because what's age appropriate is not defined in the law. And therefore you've had like instances where you have, just the most innocuous mentions of sexual orientation, rainbow flags, what have you, being taken down in high schools because people are afraid of violating this law.
Well, that would be absurd.
It's happening though.
But it's happening, and it's happening because the law that you
where is it
bill that happened in at least 2 school districts I can remember. In Dade County, they at first voted down their sex education curriculum and then had to restore it. And much of this comes because the bill you voted for allows any parent to sue a school district over this matter. Was that appropriate to put in there?
And I would add too, in Seminole County in high schools, the yearbook, their yearbook photos were covered up. That had students called the "Don't Say Gay" bill, and those photos were covered up because the bill had passed and become a law, and it was high school.
Well, I know that there's.
Because we're asking this because you describe yourself on your website as a common sense Republican.
I do.
But you voted for all of the very extreme social issue bills this year and last year.
Well, you know, as I said, I believe that we need to get back to the basics of teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic. And that's what school's about. And we are teaching, we need, you know, we just seem to focus on everything else but. And
how do you know that though? Says
how do
who?
I know that? I've raised 7 children.
Well,
I'm
but
through the school program, public, private, you name it, charter.
Well, you don't have any say with private schools, but we have asked a number of Republicans, you know, how do you know, where is the evidence that this supposed indoctrination and movement away from basic education was happening?
I've knocked over 100,000 doors in Democrat doors, NPA doors, Republican doors over the last 3 campaigns, including this one. And I hear it so much at the doors. Last campaign, it was the #1 issue. This campaign, inflation's the #1 issue. I have conversations every day on this. So I don't know how much bigger of a survey I could do than that.
I'm sorry, I'm going to jump in because we haven't heard from Miss Osta in quite a while. And
Yes, thank you.
yeah, so I wanted to ask you briefly, tell us how you would have voted on the so-called Stop Woke Act, House Bill 7 that we've been discussing, and tell us your views on the open carrying of firearms.
Okay, perfect. All right, so I'm going to cover those 2, but then I also want to circle back to the Don't Say Gay bill. So 3 things.
Sure,
real quick.
sure. Yep.
In terms of the Don't Say Gay bill and the anti-woke bill, I would have voted, I always get confused with I guess you would say against them. So I am not in favor of either one. I know Mr. Caruso said that we need to get back to reading, writing, and arithmetic. I would say we need to get back to reading, writing, the mathematics, the sciences, history, physics, and the arts. You can't not educate the next generation of their history, otherwise we'd be like Germany after the Nazis. So we should not be writing things out of history books. Children should be getting the full perspective of history. They also need a full perspective of the sciences. And then in terms of the issue with Governor DeSantis wanting to have an open carry, I'm just going to be perfectly honest. I am a gun owner. I have a concealed carry, and I also am an attorney who does personal injury. So I see auto accidents pretty much every day. I'm going to give you an analogy. In order to drive and operate a vehicle, you need to have a license. You take a class, you learn how to drive, you take a driver's test, you get a license, you can operate your vehicle. People seem to mess up driving every day, though. There are accidents galore. So an open carry policy or measure, whatever you want to call it, would just be a nightmare. It would be extremely dangerous. You think of people who have road rage. Now imagine those people with road rage who have a gun in the front seat. So as a responsible gun owner, I do not think it's a good idea at all to have an open carry. I think I addressed all 3. Oh, it's mute.
You're muted, Steve.
I'll reopen the floor for other questions from my colleagues if they have any.
Go ahead, Dan.
Rep. Caruso, you voted on the 15-week abortion ban this last session. There's been some hint that the legislature might go further in this next session, given that Roe v. Wade was overturned and all that. Where do you stand on further clamping down on abortions in Florida?
I like that. I voted in favor of the 15-week bill. I believe it was good legislation. I think I don't see the legislature going any further. I like the bill as it's written in dealing with abortion. I believe women should have a choice. I just think that choice should be limited, and I think 15 weeks is a good number.
Is that a line in the sand number? If a bill comes up next session that says, hey, 6 weeks, would you be in favor of that?
No.
Okay.
That you're saying that's pretty much a heartbeat bill, and no.
Okay. Ms. Osta, where do you stand on that?
So the problem with the 15-week abortion ban bill is that it has no exceptions for rape, incest, or human trafficking. I think that is a huge problem. I would not support anything like that. I am extremely pro-choice. And oftentimes women might not even know, women or young girls might not even know that they are pregnant till after that 15-week mark. Yeah.
So do you have a problem with having a limitation of 15 weeks in and of itself, or just the part about no exceptions for rape, incest, or human trafficking?
Oh, I don't like either. I don't like either part. There should be that exception at a bare minimum. So if there is a case of rape, incest, or human trafficking, that there should be an allowance. I personally think that the government should not be involved in terms of women's healthcare and decisions. That should be between the woman and her doctor. But at a bare minimum, there should be the exception for, like I said, rape, incest, and human trafficking. As far as the time limit of the 15 weeks go, I am also not a fan of that. I would not support putting a timestamp on it.
And I would propose to Ms. Osta, so she's in favor of abortion at any term, any part of the pregnancy.
Is there a question?
Yeah. Are you in favor of abortion at any time during pregnancy?
Yes.
Full term.
Okay.
Full term abortion.
Yes.
Okay.
I've said it 3 times now,
Yeah,
but yes.
good.
So you don't think there should be any restrictions even in the 3rd trimester?
In the 3rd trimester, as long as it should be permitted, as long as there is an issue for the woman's health or there's like significant defects with the fetus.
Well, now we sound like we're dancing.
So maybe you go ahead, Dan.
Because I just asked, would she support full term abortions? And she said, yes. I've said that 3 times. And now she's saying something different.
Ms. Osta, what exactly is your view here? So is it essentially, what was under Roe v. Wade? What exactly is are you saying here? What sort of limitations would you put on an abortion law if we were, say, approaching this issue for the very first time? You're laying down the law of how exactly it's going to work. How would you craft that law?
Well, like I said before, I don't think the government should be involved in that process. It should be between the woman and her doctor. If there has to be a law on it, then, like I said before, it would have to go up until that last trimester, only if there is a defect or it's going to have serious harm or death to the mother.
And Rep. Caruso, you recognize that most abortions, well, first off, very few abortions do take place that late in the pregnancy, but when they do, is it not mostly in situations like Ms. Osta is describing?
92% of abortions take place during the first 15 weeks.
Right.
Under the past law.
Right.
It was during the first 15 weeks.
So the ideas we're talking about here, late term abortions are fairly rare, and when they occur are largely the situations that Ms. Osta is talking about, right? You're talking about somebody who wanted a kid and finds out that there's a serious risk to themselves or that the fetus is non-viable, right?
Well, I think there's isolated cases for everything. We don't know, and it's all subjective as to what reason we're aborting. I believe that I believe the statute that we passed is good law. I supported it then, I support it now, and that's my position.
Okay.
How long are we supposed to go on for?
I think it was about an hour, which means we're getting.
It was an hour. I had a half
We're
an hour on
getting
my
near the end,
calendar, and I just have to, if you don't mind, let me send a text. Because I had a 10 o'clock appointment.
Sure, we'll be done before 10, Mike.
No, but I have to get there. So,
Oh, I understand.
You know, time flies when you're having fun.
that's right. Hold on.
Excuse me.
Okay. Just let them know I'm running late.
Let's I just have one other question again on a totally different topic, and the more concise you can be, the more it'll be appreciated by everybody, I'm sure. Mike Caruso, do lobbyists have too much influence in Tallahassee?
Yes.
And what can be done about it?
You know, we did a lot. I think back in 2012, the parties, the trips, all that ended with the stiff legislation that did pass. Now, those little red and white mints, you're not even allowed to take that from a lobbyist now, if you meet with a lobbyist. But their influence is strong, and the lobbyists come in and they feed the different politicians PCs, and that's where they can have significant impact. Getting $1,000 from a lobbyist isn't going to change anybody's vote. It never would change. It just doesn't. Even if you got a couple checks like that. I look at lobbyists when I draft a bill. I invite all stakeholders into my office. I want to know, let's talk about the bill. I'll invite lobbyists into my office that have opposing sides on the thing. I want their feedback. I want their input.
Real quick, Rep. Caruso, do you have a PC?
I'm weighing the different things. So yes, they have too much influence. I believe that. But for me, it doesn't play a part in my politics.
Hey, real quick, Rep. Caruso, do you have you said stroking $1,000 check isn't much, but you said you also mentioned PCs because stroking a $50,000 check is a different subject. Do you have a political committee?
I have there's different PCs that support me.
Okay, but you don't have like a direct political committee, like a member committee, like a lot do?
No.
Okay.
Mr. Osta, what's your brief perspective on the influence that lobbyists have in the Florida Capitol?
I would say that their influence has been historically too strong. And one of the things that I've mentioned throughout my campaign is that I'm a very stubborn person and I listen to both sides. And then at the end of the day, make a decision on what I believe is the most fair, the most right for the people. And so, my campaign has not accepted money from any large companies or corporations. That actually makes it a lot harder to raise money, believe it or not. But one of the things that I pride myself on is that high level of stubbornness and wanting to represent only the people, not these companies, corporations, or the lobbyists, regardless of the dollar amount they might flash in your face.
And also, just quickly, Mike, do you believe the 2020 election was decided fairly, presidential election?
The presidential election?
Yes, sir.
There might have been I believe there's wrongdoing in every election. Whether it was decided or not, no, I don't think it was decided. I think there's fraud in every election we have.
I mean, do you think Joe Biden was elected fairly?
Truman Dewey.
Do you think Joe Biden
Kennedy.
was elected fairly?
I can't hear you.
Do you think Joe Biden was fairly elected? legitimately elected.
Yes, he's our
Okay.
president, and
Well, now you say he's our president, but, you know,
yes, I'm not one of the January Sixers, if that's what you mean.
okay. All right. Ms. Osta, you?
Yes, I don't think it's a matter of, belief or not belief. The evidence, the facts are what they are. My background, before I went to law school, I dual majored in biomedical science and molecular microbiology with a minor in political science. So the way I think is very evidence-based, I guess you would say.
Okay.
And so there is no evidence of voter fraud, and the people have gotten behind him and supported him, which, even further ratifies he is our president.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. I'm going to be respectful of the clock, and everybody has other things they have to do, and we've covered a lot of ground here this morning. So thanks to both of you for being here. Mike Caruso, Sienna, Osta, thanks so much. Best of luck to both of you.